بودكاست ريهاميات. أنا ريهام جرجور. مرحبا. حلقة اليوم رقم 180 من بودكاست ريهاميات، حلقة مميزة جدا ومختلفة عن كل الحلقات السابقة خلال ال7 سنين الماضيين، لأنه اللي عمله هو الذكاء الاصطناعي. طلبت من الذكاء الاصطناعي يعمل حلقة بودكاست عن كتاب الحزن الواعي، التعامل مع الحزن والأسى وطرق التأقلم مع ألم الفقد بعد وفاة شخص عزيز. الطبعة الأولى صدرت في معرض القاهرة الدولي للكتاب يناير 2024. يعني الأساس لحلقة اليوم والمصدر هو شغلي أنا بناء على دبلومة أخذتها من أمريكا Grief and Loss Therapy، ومراجع كتير وكتب وترجمات وأبحاث ومؤتمرات واستبيانات عملتها خلال شغل شاق ومضني لمدة سنين. بدأ بكورونا 2020 مع اجتياح للفقد بحياتنا واحتياج ملح لعلم النفس نعرف منه طرق التعامل مع ألم الفقد. فلما دخلت نصوص من كتاب الحزن الواعي، طلبت من الذكاء الاصطناعي حلقة بودكاست بالإنجليزي وحلقة بالعربي. اليوم رح شارككم بالبودكاست يلي عمل لي إياه ال AI بالإنجليزي بأصوات 2 محاورين، هو يلي حط الأسئلة والحوار وتقسيمته والتسجيل. بعدين أنا كملت ساوند إديتنج لحتى أعمل المونتاج الصوتي وحط المقدمة والخاتمة للحلقة. خبرة فريدة من نوعها وممتعة، فيها عنصر الإبهار، وما بخبي عليكم كان فيها كمان شوية مخاوف، لكن حبيت أني خوض هالتجربة كجزء من الإعداد والكتابة. أنا وعم أكتب كتابي الرابع يلي رح خبركن عنه بختام الحلقة. ويبقى السؤال، هل يمكن أنه الارتفيشال انتليجنس يستبدلنا تماما كبشر، ولا فقط نستعين فيه بنواحي معينة؟ وإلى أي مدى رح نستعين فيه لحتى يعمل الشغل بدالنا، ولكن في شغل أساسي بيضل لازم نعمله نحن كبشر؟ تساؤلات كتير تخص الذكاء الاصطناعي، ورح نرجع لهالأسئلة بختام الحلقة. لهيك خلونا هلأ نستمتع بالحوار عن كتاب الحزن الواعي بالإنجليزي. وما تقلقوا من اللغة، المستوى متوسط إلى بسيط، فما رح تكون حلقة اليوم معقدة، فيها شوية كلام تخصصي أكيد، لكن بشجعكم أنه تسمعوا الحوار وتستمتعوا فيه وتستفيدوا منه.
Have you ever gotten news that just completely stocks you, or felt totally overwhelmed by a change in your life? Something so big it felt like, I don't know, the world just tilted. It happens to everyone, right? But figuring out how to handle it, well, that often feels like stumbling around in the dark. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really going deep into the whole experience of grief and loss. It's complex, it's profound, and we're drawing our insights from this really comprehensive Arabic source. It offers just a fascinating perspective on this, fundamental human journey. So our mission today is to give you a clear picture of what grief actually is, how it shows up, sometimes in really surprising ways. We'll tackle some common misconceptions, things people often get wrong, and importantly, look at practical ways to navigate this consciously. It's kind of a shortcut to getting informed, helping you understand not just the feeling of grief, but why it happens the way it does and how to approach it with awareness. Let's jump in.
Okay, so when we're faced with the pain of loss, this source highlights two absolutely essential things, understanding and support. But what's really insightful, I think, is how it frames grief. It's not just a state, like being sad. It's presented as a continuous, ongoing action. The source actually uses the term to be grieving actively, which means life after loss isn't just, affected by grief. It's totally changed, completely enveloped by this active process.
Reframing it as an action. That's powerful. So how does seeing it as something you do rather than just something you have, how does that change how you might approach it? Does it mean you have more agency?
Absolutely, yeah. It implies more agency, because if grieving is an action, you're participating in it, right? Not just passively getting hit by waves of pain. And this ties into that paradox this source talks about. Grief is universal, everyone goes through it, but it's also incredibly personal, unique, like your fingerprint. Seeing it as an action highlights your individual journey within that shared human experience.
That makes a lot of sense, and it connects to that big misconception the source really wants to clear up. The idea that grief is some kind of problem you need to solve. If it's an action, like you said, you can't just fix it. So what's a more constructive way to think about that pain, according to the source, if it's not a puzzle?
Well, it's about recognizing that pain itself. I mean, philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries, right? There's no easy fix. The source suggests thinking of it more like a landscape you have to navigate, not a problem you need to wipe out. So you shift focus from finding a cure to figuring out how to, well, integrate this massive experience into your life. And speaking of complexities, the source brings up complicated grief. This is when really deep grief from maybe years ago gets stirred up again if the new loss happens. It pulls all those old memories and feelings right back to the surface, which really shows why we need to be aware and kind of practice noticing these triggers when they pop up.
That's such a crucial point. And the sheer variety of loss really drives home how deep this goes. The source talks about the grief of a mother who's lost a fetus or had a stillbirth. Society often just dismisses that pain, tells mothers they shouldn't grieve for what wasn't. But the source is really powerful here. It says mothers remember every single detail of their angels in heaven, no matter how often it happens. That really challenges how we tend to silence certain kinds of grief.
Exactly. And beyond that specific, often overlooked pain, the source covers, losing family, friends, colleagues. The intensity obviously changes depending on how close you were. It also talks about collective grief. That's when we all mourn a celebrity, for instance, or when we grieve alongside a public figure who's lost someone close, like a child or spouse.
Right. You feel connected to that shared sadness somehow.
Yeah. And then there's indirect grief. That's what you feel when someone close to you loses someone important to them. You're grieving alongside them, in a way. Oh, and another layer, unresolved issues. If you had unfinished business or difficult feelings about someone who died, their death can bring all that rushing back. It's like it demands attention, suddenly.
Wow, yeah. That shows just how deep those connections run, doesn't it? And their lasting impact. But what happens when that impact, that grief, doesn't find a way forward, when it gets kind of stuck? The source talks about the signs, right? The ways you can tell that loss is really disrupting someone's life.
Yes, these are really important signals to watch for. First, the grief just takes over your life, stopping you from living how you planned or intended to. You feel derailed. Second, it often leads to pulling back, isolating yourself. You start avoiding family, friends, work colleagues.
Yeah, shrinking your world.
Exactly. And you might find you just can't feel joy anymore or enjoy things that used to make you happy. That capacity feels gone. And finally, there's just that overwhelming feeling of being stuck, like you're wading through mud and just can't move forward, can't find any kind of new rhythm.
That feeling of being stuck is so common and just awful. And when people feel like that, they often reach for ways to cope, right? But sometimes those ways aren't actually helpful. They're maladaptive. The source really gets into these.
It does. A really common one is just minimizing it or outright denial. Dismissing how important the loss was or acknowledging it, but saying, oh, it's not the time, just pushing it aside. Then there's distraction, just filling every moment to try and drown out the pain. This can look like becoming a total workaholic.
Right, burying yourself in tasks.
Or becoming hypersocial, needing constant activity so there's never a quiet moment to actually feel anything.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to outrun the sadness by just being incredibly busy.
I think a lot of us can relate to that urge, that constant need for distraction. And then it can shift into more compulsive stuff, right? Like binging.
Yeah, exactly. Like binge eating, the source describes it almost like trying to swallow your sorrows, literally fill that internal void, or binge watching shows, just zoning out for hours and hours to numb everything.
Escapism, basically.
Totally. And these can slide into actual addictions, trying to numb the pain with, say, digital addictions, gaming for like 18 hours straight, or endless scrolling on social media, or of course substance abuse, smoking, alcohol, drugs, even behavioral addictions like gambling. And another one the source mentions is excessive spending. Shopping fever, they call it. It's like trying to get a sense of comfort or control or even security through buying things, perceiving the purchase as a gain to somehow balance out the emotional loss. It's a tangible attempt to fill that intangible hole.
Wow, seeing shopping as emotional compensation. That's a really interesting angle. And these effects, they aren't just emotional or behavioral, are they? The source points out some pretty serious physical and mental health stuff, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Unprocessed grief can definitely trigger clinical depression and anxiety disorders. And it can manifest physically, too, in what we call psychosomatic symptoms, physical problems that actually stem from psychological distress.
Like what sort of things?
Think about how chronic stress affects your gut, right? It can lead to severe diarrhea or constipation, or stomach ulcers. Even things like high blood pressure can be linked to prolonged emotional turmoil. It's literally the body expressing the distress when the mind feels overwhelmed. It shows just how much grief hits your entire system.
Okay, so if grief is this complex, active thing, how do we even start to understand the journey through it? Our source then looks at Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's famous 5 stages. denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It notes they were first for dying patients, but then became really helpful for people grieving loved ones. But, and this is key, our source points out some really common misunderstandings about these stages that can actually get in the way.
Exactly. The stages offer a useful map, kind of, but the source immediately gives 4 crucial warnings or caveats.
Yeah.
First, not everyone goes through all 5 stages. For example, someone who cared for a loved one long-term might have experienced a lot of anticipatory grief before the death. They might skip denial altogether when the death finally happened.
Okay, that makes sense.
And second,
they're definitely not linear. It's not step 1, step 2, step 3. You might bounce from anger to bargaining, maybe touch acceptance, then suddenly feel deep depression again.
so moving back isn't failing. Not at all. It's not a relapse or a failure. It's just how grief often works. It ebbs and flows, it swirls around. It's not a straight line you walk.
Good to know. And third,
They're not a checklist you just tick off and you're done. You don't complete anger and move on forever. You'll probably revisit stages, especially in the first few years. There's absolutely no right or wrong way to do this, and definitely no grading system. Your grief journey is yours alone.
that's so important for letting go of self-judgment. And the last point.
Finally, the source, drawing on psychologist William Worden, suggests thinking of them less as passive stages and more as active tasks of mourning. The focus shifts to actively integrating the loss into your life, finding ways to keep living while still maintaining a connection, a bond with the person who died, rather than just trying to get over it or leave them behind.
Wow, okay. Tasks of mourning, that reframes it completely. It's not about getting through it, but incorporating it.
Exactly. And beyond the emotional side, grief can show up in other really profound ways, especially through anxiety and trauma.
That's a powerful link. I've heard some experts even talk about anxiety as maybe a missing 6th stage of grief.
Yeah, they sometimes call it grief-related anxiety. It's anxiety that pops up for the first time after a major loss. It often looks like constant catastrophic thinking, always jumping to the worst possible outcome.
Or like hypochondria.
Exactly, or hypochondria, this intense fear that you'll die in the same way the person you lost did. It's a very specific, potent kind of anxiety tied directly to the loss.
And that can escalate, right, into actual panic attacks.
It definitely can. Full-blown panic and anxiety attacks. And the source points out their physical symptoms, racing heart, shortness of breath, dizziness, are often mistaken for a heart attack or some other medical emergency. The chances of having these attacks really go up after a significant loss. It's a clear sign the nervous system is just completely overloaded.
And then there's psychological trauma itself, which often goes hand in hand with loss, especially if the death was sudden, violent, or a suicide. This trauma kicks our basic survival responses into gear.
Right. You've got the fight response. That looked like resistance, anger, maybe physical tension like clenching your jaw or fists, sometimes even destructive behaviors.
Then the opposite, almost, the flight response. That's all about escape, feeling hyperactive, constantly vigilant, like you desperately need to run away from the pain.
And sometimes the system just shuts down. That's the freeze response.
Yeah.
It's like total paralysis, feeling numb, detached, dissociated from everything, almost like playing dead when the threat feels too overwhelming. A profound disconnect.
And you mentioned a fourth one earlier, the fawn response. You said that's particularly common in grief trauma.
Yeah, it seems to be. This is that appeasement response.
Yeah.
It's where the person grieving sacrifices their own needs and feelings to keep others comfortable or happy. Like maybe agreeing to put up a photo of the person who died because the family wants it, even though seeing it causes them intense pain every single time. They prioritize avoiding conflict over their own healing process.
Wow, that's a really subtle but powerful dynamic. And when these trauma responses stick around for too long, say beyond 6 months or so, what happens then?
Well, the source says the body gets stuck. It can't get back to its normal state of balance, that rest and digest mode. And this often leads to what people call brain fog.
Ah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, difficulty concentrating, problems with memory, struggling to plan things or make decisions. It affects everyday tasks, work performance. It's a clear sign the whole system is still on high alert, diverting resources away from higher brain functions just to survive.
That sounds exhausting. But there's a bit of hope here, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned neuroplasticity.
Yes, and this is really encouraging. Neuroplasticity is the brain's incredible ability to actually reorganize itself, to change its structure and function based on experience. And studies are showing that practices like yoga and mindfulness can literally help reverse the effect of trauma on the brain. They can increase the size of the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory and managing emotions, and shrink the amygdala, the brain's fear center. That offers real, tangible hope.
That is incredible. A bit of light in the darkness.
It really is. And speaking of vulnerability, the source really stresses how vital it is to address grief and trauma in children and teenagers. It warns that neglecting it can have devastating long-term consequences.
So important.
And it emphasizes normalizing therapy for kids, maybe by parents modeling it themselves, making it okay, even normal, to seek help for emotional struggles.
Absolutely. And finally, there's a very severe physical outcome mentioned, broken heart syndrome.
Yes, Takotsubo cardiomyopathy is the medical term. It's where intense psychological trauma, extreme grief, can actually cause physical damage to the heart, sometimes even leading to death. The source gives these heartbreaking real-world examples, like elderly parents passing away just days or weeks after losing a child they'd cared for decades. It's a stark reminder of how deeply connected our minds and bodies are, especially in the face of overwhelming loss, a literal breaking of the heart.
Wow. Okay. So, given all of this, the complexity, the potential pitfalls, the physical toll, what can people actually do? How can we grieve consciously, healthily? The source offers some really practical tools, right?
It does. And the main goal, it reiterates, isn't to get rid of the grief. It's about integrating the grief and the pain into your life, like braiding it in, learning to carry it without it completely paralyzing you or controlling everything. It's about finding what they call the new normal, basically re-scripting your life story after the loss.
Okay, so first step, maybe. Seeking professional help seems crucial. The source had that great line, come for the crisis and stay for the work.
Exactly. It acknowledges that, yeah, the immediate crisis might be what gets you through the door, but the real lasting healing comes from sticking with it, doing the work over time. It's not a quick fix.
And one therapeutic approach it mentioned was narration therapy. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's the idea that repeatedly telling your story, the story of the loss, the story of the person who died, how they died, your immediate reactions is incredibly therapeutic. This recounting, telling it again and again, helps you process it. It helps you integrate the narratives into your own life story to sort of own it, rather than being overwhelmed by fragmented memories or feelings.
That makes sense. It connects to that other powerful idea you mentioned, that healing only happens through the pain, not by trying to go around it.
Precisely. The source uses the metaphor of pain being like a tunnel. You have to go through it to get to the light on the other side. There's no shortcut, no bypass.
So what kinds of therapy can help people navigate that tunnel?
Well, besides traditional talk therapy, the source points to creative therapies, things like music therapy, art therapy, even play therapy, and it suggests simple, accessible versions can be really helpful for both adults and kids, a way to express things when words fail. It also mentions cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. That focuses on the link between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Yeah.
The idea being if you change one, like your negative thought patterns, you can influence the others.
Okay, challenging those automatic negative thoughts.
Right. And it contrasts that slightly with acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. ACT kind of starts from accepting that difficult emotions, like sadness or anger, are just a normal part of being human. So instead of fighting the sadness constantly, ACT might encourage you to acknowledge it, make space for it, feel it, and then commit to actions that align with your values, even with the sadness present.
Okay, so it's about acknowledging and coexisting, not just battling the emotion. And what about just everyday stuff, things people can do themselves? The source had some really practical tools there.
Oh yeah, absolutely vital. One is practicing affirmations and gratitude journaling. Simple things like writing down maybe 3 things you're grateful for each day, no matter how small. And repeating positive affirmations, I am loved, I can handle this. Even just, I am grateful for this cup of tea.
Little anchors in the day.
Exactly. Then there are these things called vagus nerve stimulation exercises, or VNS. These are simple physical actions, like gentle tapping on certain points on your face, neck, shoulders, or even just giving yourself a hug while repeating calming phrases like, I am safe, I am okay. These actions stimulate the vagus nerve, which helps calm your whole nervous system down. The source also mentions things like smelling lavender oil, humming, gargling, even splashing cold water on your face can have a similar calming effect.
Interesting. Simple physical things to ground you. And breathing, of course.
Deep breathing, yes. The fact that you can consciously control your breath is huge. Slowing your breathing down can directly slow your heart rate during panic or high anxiety. And you can do it anywhere, anytime, without anyone noticing. It's an immediate self-regulation tool.
That's really empowering.
And then, the basics we often forget when we're overwhelmed. Nutrition, hydration, sleep, and just some gentle physical movement. These are like the bedrock. They provide the physical resilience you need to cope with the emotional storm. Don't underestimate them.
So true. Easy to let those slide.
Very easy. Another powerful tool is journaling. Just free writing, pen on paper, the source notes, it's often more therapeutic than typing. Getting thoughts and feelings out, even just for 5 or 10 minutes a day. The physical act seems to help untangle things.
And what about getting back out into the world, socializing? That can feel terrifying after a loss.
Yeah, it really can. The advice here is to try and differentiate between social situations that feel difficult and those that feel genuinely intolerable. The source encourages you to be brave, to gently push yourself into the difficult ones sometimes, but also to have self-compassion. If something feels truly intolerable right now, it's okay to step back. Listen to yourself. It's a gradual process.
Okay. And for those of us supporting someone who's grieving, I think a lot of people feel awkward. They don't know what to say or do. What's the best approach?
The source gives some really concrete, powerful advice here. Do instead of ask.
Do instead of ask.
Yeah. Instead of saying the vague, let me know if you need anything, which puts the burden on the grieving person, offer specific, concrete help. Like, I'm bringing dinner over on Tuesday night, or I'm going to the supermarket, what can I pick up for you?
Taking the initiative.
Exactly. People grieving are often just in survival mode. They might not even know what they need, or they might feel unable to ask. Just showing up with practical help without making them ask is incredibly supportive.
That's such practical, helpful advice, a real game changer. Okay, so as we wrap up this practical section, what's the ultimate goal of this whole conscious grieving journey?
Well, the source really emphasizes the importance of eventually finding new or perhaps renewed meaning in life after the loss. This could be through anything, really. Getting involved in charity work, forming new relationships, maybe even travel therapy, just getting new experiences, meeting strangers who don't know your story, finding something that gives life purpose again, provides some hope, helps you forge that new path forward. It's not about replacing what was lost, but about building something new alongside the grief.
Wow. What an incredibly rich and thorough exploration of grief and loss, drawing on this really insightful source. So just to recap the main takeaway, conscious grieving, it's not about getting rid of the pain, is it? It's not about finding a cure. It's more like a journey of integration. Learning how to carry that grief, almost like it's woven into you, part of your life's fabric now, but in a way that allows you to still live fully, to find that new normal.
Exactly. And throughout that whole journey, that active process, the source just constantly comes back to the need for self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. You're navigating something immense, something that takes time, patience, and a lot of understanding towards yourself.
Definitely. And maybe as you're thinking about all this, just consider for a moment how much pressure there is in our culture for, good vibes only. That constant push for happiness. Think about how that pressure can make feeling grief, feeling sadness or pain seem somehow wrong, like a failure almost. Just reflect on how challenging that cultural backdrop can be when you're dealing with the very real, very deep pain of loss. And why choosing to consciously acknowledge that grief, to work through it, isn't weakness at all. It's actually an act of incredible courage and authenticity, especially in a world that so often asks us just to smile through everything.
بتمنى يكون الحوار عجبكم مع الترجمة والتلخيص لكتابي الثالث الحزن الواعي، وتكونوا انبهرتوا مثل ما أنا انبهرت الصراحة من شغل ال AI. ومثل ما قلت لكم طلبت منه للذكاء الاصطناعي حلقة تانية بودكاست بالعربي، وعمل لي حلقة حوالي 8 دقايق، كانت أقصر من النسخة الإنجليزي، وأنا كمان اختصرتها ل6 دقايق. لحتى تكتمل الخبرة استخدمت أكثر من AI، كل واحد فيهم لحتى يعمل لي جزء من الشغل. الحلقة العربي قسمتها لفيديوهات بتلاقوهم على قناتي على يوتيوب، وكمان على حساب بودكاست ريهاميات على انستغرام وفيسبوك. حوار بين 2 شخصيات AI صممتهم بالذكاء الاصطناعي، ورح أحط لكم اللينك للفيديو مع نوتس هالحلقة. وهيك بنكون وصلنا لختام الموسم العاشر، وبودكاست ريهاميات رح ياخد بريك للتحضير للموسم ال11، وكمان لظروف سفري، مؤتمرات ومحاضرات بالصيف، والأهم هو الرتوش الأخيرة لكتابي الرابع يلي بيسعدني وبيشرفني أعلن عنه لأول مرة. عنوان الكتاب كتالوج التربية الرقمية، دليل الأهل لتنشئة أبناء في عصر الإدمانات الرقمية والذكاء الاصطناعي. اليوم 11 تموز يوليو 2025، فخورة ومبسوطة إني أقول ترقبوا كتابي الرابع بعنوان كتالوج التربية الرقمية. رح يصدر خلال أيام إن شاء الله، ورح تابعكم بكل التفاصيل. بعد فترة البريك بنرجع بنلتقي على خير إن شاء الله لنتشارك بموضوعات الموسم الحادي عشر بموعدنا المتجدد صباح الجمعة 2 والرابع من كل شهر، وحلقات جديدة من بودكاست ريهاميات. بس هيك. لو عجبتكم الحلقة لا تنسوا تشاركوها على السوشيال ميديا حتى ناس أكتر تستفيد. تقدروا تتواصلوا معي عبر الموقع الإلكتروني لبودكاست ريهاميات www.rehamiat.com أو تبعتوا لي إيميل على ريهاميات@gmail.com أو مسج واتساب على الرقم 020 12 79 709 719. وعلى الفيسبوك دايما تابعوا صفحة وهاشتاج ريهاميات. سلامات.